light strike aircraft, light fighters, light bombers, what I'm calling a lightweight, cheap to produce, mass produce, unsophisticated bomb truck. I've watched some videos, been reading in comments and going onto forums and things like that and looking at light, cheap aircraft, how they can be used, and some of the reasons for and against. And there's plenty of debates out there, whether it's turboprops or piston engines. You know, most people lean towards turboprops. I still think there's advantages to piston engines myself, but some of the main points, apart from engines, etc., is the ability to use old equipment that we've already got, old equipment that our allies have got, that we can use, that's already in stockpile and would usually just be a used by date and it gets destroyed, okay, to make use of what we've got and to save money. Now, one of the other things was is if you can produce a cheap and efficient bomb truck, a platform to deliver certain payloads. Lessons we can learn from World War II and other major conflicts, and this is where the line blurs, is attrition. Being able to produce very cheap aircraft that are semi-expendable. And this is why I've talked about using polymers and plastics and wood and cellulose fibers and things like that, whether it's bamboo, hemp, you know, whatever, timber, fiberglassy sort of things, canvas, etc. Because in wartime, things get destroyed. And when you have complicated equipment, complicated hardware that's very expensive to produce, to design, to maintain, and the ability to manufacture them in bulk, if these are taken out by weather, by bad weather, by bird strikes, by unforeseen things, you know, turbines that are inhaling debris from rough runway fields, sand from sandstorms and dust, etc., etc. These are all things that can go against a turboprop, and especially at low level, where a little plane like this, it doesn't want to be up high where it can be seen by a highly advanced government force radar system. Okay, it wants to be down in the weeds, being maneuverable, relatively slow, but also have throttle response. And this is why I like piston engine, the idea of a piston engine plane. Okay, people have argued that you'll never be able to use alcohol, ethanol-based biofuels, etc. in a plane. Well, and then they'll argue that maybe you could in a turbine engine. That's why I'm throwing ideas up there just to get a debate started. Some other things to come into it as well is the ability of people who are in command of using assets that are going to cost a lot of money. You know, they may not take on a mission. They may not be prepared to roll the dice on equipment that they know that they can't replace. And then having ground crews frustrated and worried about what they're sending up into the air because they don't have spare parts. It's coming to its next major service, or it's overdue for a major service, where if you have cheap piston engines, they're easily replaced. Just rip it out, throw another one in. And that's why I talked about a 6-cylinder automotive engine turbocharged, or whether that be a V8 if you were in America or whatever. But after talking to some guys from Indonesia and the Philippines, Thailand, etc., that have small defence budgets, Australia's no different. Australia has a very small defence budget compared to the guys that we're looking at fighting. Because to come and fight us and to threaten us down here, you need a lot of logistics, you need a big military, you need a whole heap of planning, and you need a whole heap of budget spending. So we have to be able to fight and punch above our weight, which traditionally we've always done, but we've also been lucky enough to have pretty strong allies on our side. Mind you, those fights weren't Australia only fights. We were involved in other people's wars, so, you know, different scenarios. I'm coming from the fact that we should be able to go it alone. And if you could produce, you know, a modern aircraft that everybody would know would be the A-29 Super Tucano. Now, they say that for one modern fighter jet, you can buy at least 6, maybe even more Super Tucanos. So but they're still expensive. So I'm saying, what about having something that's even cheaper than a Super Tucano, doesn't have all of the same electronics and things like that? I'm talking of as simple as you can make it, as cheap and simple as you can make it. Get it in the air, do the testing, do the pilot training and the crew training, and while that is happening, then you can look at adding systems to it. Give it enough spare room for computer and electronic systems. Give it enough spare room in the engine capability department that you can add more boost to it to get more power, slightly bigger engine, improved engine. Give it space and hard points. Design it around a potential missile that you have in your arsenal, or something that can be used, you know. So if the belly of the plane was to be able to hold half of a missile that's 4 meters long inside it, you know, so you can have a little plane like this, but it can carry a missile a long way and then release that long standoff capable missile, that's something to look at. Light, cheap, replaceable, mass-produced aircraft, whether it be, I'm a fan of little submarines, and again, cheap vehicles. Now, if you look at the attrition, you know, look at all of wars throughout history. When there's been blockades, there's been sieges. World War One was a battle of attrition. World War Two was a battle of attrition. It was the whole world basically versus Germany, and Germany was getting bombed day and night from all fronts. America's might during the daytime, Britain at night relentlessly. They had night fighters, they were hitting trains, they were hitting power facility ball bearing, you know, their whole industry was under attack, left, right and centre. Oil, you know, the ability for them to just keep fighting when they did is unbelievable. But, you know, look at their tanks. They put too much emphasis on too much different equipment, too much experimental equipment, and then they went up against people like the United States and Russia, who just mass-produced stuff, the Sherman and the T-34, and, you know, Russia just held on to its Mosin Nagant, get out there, you know. And America just had never-ending supplies of their industrial industry, was just unstoppable. Same with Russia's, you know, and Germany still fought on hard, okay? So, and then we can come down to like the Vietnamese and Afghanis and these guys. They fought against the biggest, strongest, mightiest places on earth, held out. Germany held out against unbelievable odds for so long, and they still fought right up until the end. Especially a country like Australia, if we took a leaf out of other people's books and looked at mass produce, because when you mass produce a little plane, right, that might only have a warhead that can't blow a ship up, but can cripple it, take it out of the fight, okay? But you can mass produce a whole heap of these, and all it can carry is one missile that has the range to get out there, but deliver a small punch, but enough to, like, you know, take it out of the fight. When you have heaps of these, they can attack from many different angles and just overwhelm them. And if you look at all air superiority and naval superiority, it's all about who can fire the most missiles at one target and overwhelm their defenses. Okay, so at the moment, we aren't even in the race. We don't even have any skin in the game because Australia can't even compete there, right? And unfortunately, when I read all these comments, you see people who must have some smarts in the defence industry or somewhere in defence, and they're so snobby, so arrogant, they will not allow conversation to come up that's outside of the box. But they're the ones who are in charge, they're the ones who are in control of this nation, and I throw in their simple little questions when I see their really arrogant answers, and they throwing technical advice and technical answers at everybody who's just bringing something up. And then I just throw in there, what are you going to do about China's hordes of ballistic missiles? They're hypersonic missiles, there's standoff cruise missiles. What's your Navy going to do then? Or what's your F-35 Joint Strike Fighters? What are they going to do when they're overwhelmed with incoming missiles and they don't have enough defensive missiles or close-in weapon support systems to defend themselves? What happens then? We don't have enough. Our manufacturing is too slow to keep demand up to them. What are you going to do? And they never answer back. It's just like, end of conversation. I'm smarter than you. You know nothing. Okay, so I'm putting out there different scenarios. Okay, it's no different to a game of chess, no different to a game of football or whatever. Warfare is all about using your imagination. The one with the best imagination, and the one who's willing to fight with what he's got right now and invent his own tactics on the spot, he's the dangerous one. You know, like it said, I've seen in knife and sword fighting circles, the most dangerous person to fight with a knife or a sword is somebody who doesn't know how to fight with a knife or a sword. They just go ballistic. Okay? So, because you don't know what they're doing. If they have a certain style and they have a certain weapon and you've trained, you can counter train in your opponent's styles and weapons. When you come up with something totally different that's out of the box, it comes from left field, it's just like a king hit from the side. And until you come up with a strategy to fight that, you got nothing. So this is what I'm trying to bring up. Conversations about thinking outside the box. Hitting with something like the fairy swordfish of World War II. It was so basic, so out of date, but it crippled one of the most up-to-date battleships of World War II. The British Navy surrounded the Bismarck and couldn't hurt it. Couldn't sink it. But a biplane that had to get ridiculously close to it and had to actually do a second run. They missed on their first run and had to come back through all of that hail of fire. And they basically missed again, but one of those torpedoes just happened to hit the Achilles heel, hit the rudder, and it was stuck going around in circles. That's the type of out-of-the-box thinking. And like the SAS's motto, who dares wins. It's that sort of mentality, that David and Goliath. That's the type of fight that I see we're in. And we need these out-of-the-box, cheap things. And our current military, you only have to look at their planners and procurement guys. Like, we can see it. It's right in front of us. They keep stuffing up. I don't know how they keep stuffing up so much. But if they didn't stuff up, we could have older equipment. Okay, we could have older equipment that works and is reliable, but it may not be the brand newest, shiniest thing off the shelf, but it works, and we could have had it in the field, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and it could be usable today. At the moment, just like our submarines, just like our Joint Strike Fighters, just like our Euro Tiger helicopter and the Taipans, we got nothing. Absolutely nothing. With all of the money and the time, it's the time. We can't get the time back. And now it looks like we potentially may need it at any moment that China's had enough and it's ready to go. we're totally dictated to by them.